Okay, well, let's try to power through project schedule management.
Okay.
And then, we're going to define it. We're going to talk about Gantt charts and network diagrams. So hopefully you have some familiarity with those in your project management work. We're going to use the terms that PMI uses for project schedule management. We're going to describe the project.
The Gantt charts. I haven't done this in a long time. Wow.
Well, and the good news is you won't have to create a Gantt chart, but you'll have to be able to identify one. So as long as you can pick a Gantt chart out of, various different kinds of schedule charts, you're golden. And again, we're going to describe the project management schedule processes, and we're going to explain various schedule network analysis techniques. So first, the definition of project schedule management, which is the processes required to manage timely completion of the project. Obviously a key goal, one that is rarely ever achieved. And project schedule management provides a detailed plan that represents how and when the project will deliver its products, services, and results as defined in the scope. So it serves as a tool for communicating, managing stakeholders' expectations, and as a basis for project reporting. So obviously we're going to create a schedule baseline, and through that we're going to determine how far on or off the baseline we are.
Hold on, keep this up.
Kevin, hold that thought. Move on to the next slide.
Okay. Identify activities.
Okay, so yeah, the key activities in project schedule management, and that's slide 255. So since you're playing along with the home game, or actually the office game, the activities are a list of all the activities to be included in the project will be identified. And those activities are actually a further decomposition of the work packages that we just recently created when we decomposed the work breakdown structure to its lowest work package level. And then we're going to estimate time and resources, and of course time and resources for each of the activities will be estimated, and that's why we want to have this fairly fine breakdown, because it's easy to talk about things that you can do in a day or a week or a month. It's harder to talk about things that might take the average person 3 months or 6 months or a year. So you want a fairly fine level of decomposition. And then of course we need to sequence all the activities because all the dependencies. So when you are building, you probably want to paint the room before you put in the flooring, just because spills happen. So we're going to put a little bit of effort into sequencing activities. So first we'll look at the project schedule, and that basically assigns the duration of the project activities. And this is Microsoft Project, which is of course not required by PMI, but is probably one of the predominant tools. Certainly there are people who use other tools, and that works very well. But the project schedule defines the start and end dates of the project and its activities, and each task is assigned a resource duration, and when appropriate, a predecessor and or successor task. So again, these are all things that are incorporated into the WBS dictionary. And again, scheduling software is used, such as Microsoft Project. So the project management plan is not a schedule. It's the overarching plan for the whole project, but when we get down to this level, we're going to come up with a project schedule as one of the fundamental tasks, and one of the fundamental subsidiary plans to the project management plan. So here we have a Gantt chart, and again, as you probably know, it's a type of bar chart that talks about the start and end dates for the project activities and the overall project schedule, and then it shows the time now line so you can see where you are, and indicates a level of completion. So for instance, on that first line, WBS summary, one element, about 57% is completed, but if you look at the time now line, probably something north of 3/4 of that summary element should be completed. So if you look, you can see that activity A should probably be more complete than it is. Activity B should be completely finished, and it's not. Activity C is just about on schedule, and activity D is actually ahead of schedule if you use the light blue shading as the, no, I guess it hasn't been started at all, so that's not the finish line, but that is the, hasn't been started at all, and if you look at the time now line, that should have been started. So basically, the WBS is organized like an outline, and so you know that. So anything subsidiary to 1 is 1.x, and then anything subsidiary, say, to 1.2 is 1.2.x, and so on down the line. So in a Gantt chart, there can be relationships, and in fact, there are a lot of scheduling techniques that you can use, and you would have these same relationships. So the 4 that you can have are finish to start, which is the most predominant relationship that you would have, that basically activity A ends, and then that would allow activity B to start. And then there are the next 2, which are finish to finish and start to start. So start to start means these 2 things start at approximately the same time, or activity B can't start until A is started. And then finish to finish, B can't finish until A finishes.
Okay, so start an activity must start before the next activity can start. Okay.
So finish to start is by far the most likely, but then after that we have finish to finish, which is an activity must finish before the next activity can finish. So even if it seems like it's done, if B is all but done, it can't really be done until A is done. So and same thing with start to start. A and B, A has to start before B can start. So for instance, the concrete has to be set before you can do anything on the concrete. So, and then the least likely is a start to finish activity, and that is that an activity must start before the next activity can finish. And if you look in your PMBOK, I think the example they give you is of a security guard. So one security guard can't leave and just leave the desk empty until the next security guard shows up. So security guard A can't leave until B shows up.
Okay.
So again, when you're not given, say if you're given information for a Gantt chart and you're not given what the relationships are, you can assume that they are finish to start, if it's in a context free. So finish to start, we already talked about these, I kind of completely spoilered this chart. So I don't know that I've got to go over them unless you have any questions.
No.
Okay. So we'll talk about dependencies in Gantt charts. And there are 2 kinds of dependencies. There are the mandatory and discretionary dependencies. So basically, mandatory, you've got to have this done. So for instance, the plumbing inspector has to come in and look at the plumbing before you close up the sheetrock. Whereas the discretionary dependencies are based on the preference of the team and can be changed as required. So, for instance, painting starting after all the electrical and plumbing work is done. Classification 2 are external versus internal dependencies. And external dependencies, for instance, if that plumbing inspector had to come out, they wouldn't necessarily be part of your organization, but would probably be somebody from the city or the county or something. And so they would be an external dependency because they're not really part of your project, but they are in some shape, manner, or form a stakeholder, and they do exert a dependency because the time that you're waiting on that person to come out is time that you're not getting work done on your project. And then we've also got internal dependencies, and those are under control of the project team. So in other words, for instance, the slab works depends on the availability of the concrete.